The Wrong Side of Devotion, What Happens When Love Becomes Unpaid Labor. I want to introduce you to someone who is quietly revolutionizing the way Black families think about love, partnership, and the invisible contracts we inherit without ever signing them. Lashawn Anyanwu is not just a voice in the conversation about family dynamics and relational health. They are a disruptor, a healer, a truth teller who refuses to let dysfunction masquerade as devotion any longer. LaShawn is doing sacred work in this world, helping Black families untangle generations of learned behavior that has been passed down like heirlooms, wrapped in the language of tradition, but soaked in imbalance. They are teaching us that love should never feel like unpaid labor, that breaking cycles is not an act of betrayal, but an act of liberation, and that the patterns we inherit do not have to become the prisons we live in. What LaShawn shared with me recently stopped me in my tracks, made me sit back, take a breath, and realize I have been holding my breath for years without even knowing it. Here's what LaShawn told me, raw and unfiltered, with the kind of honesty that makes your chest tighten and your eyes sting. They grew up watching their mother chase wife expectations from the wrong side of the relationship, not a partnership built on mutual respect, shared vision, or reciprocal care. Not a marriage where both people showed up with equal intention and effort, but a one sided devotion where their mother poured everything she had, her time, her energy, her identity, her very sense of self, into a dynamic that never honored her back. She gave and gave and gave, and the relationship took and took and took. And LaShawn, as a child, absorbed every single bit of that imbalance. They watched their family fracture under the weight of misplaced loyalty. They learned early what love was not supposed to look like, even if no one in the house ever said it out loud. That is the thing about childhood that we do not talk about enough. It does not just shape your memories, it writes the blueprint for your relationships, your boundaries, your definition of strength, your understanding of what you are worth. And for so many of us, especially Black women, that blueprint was drawn by mothers who were taught that softness meant submission, that being a wife meant erasing yourself, that love required you to shrink so someone else could expand. LaShawn's story is not just their story, it is ours. It is the story of every woman who watched her mother give until there was nothing left and then blamed herself for not being grateful enough for the scraps. And let me be clear about something right now. This is not about vilifying mothers. This is not about pointing fingers at the women who did the best they could with the tools they were given. This is about naming the system that taught them to perform devotion in relationships that did not deserve it. This is about recognizing that when you grow up in a home where one person is doing all the emotional labor, all the compromising, all the bending, all the adjusting, all the sacrificing, while the other person just exists, just takes up space, just receives, you learn that love is supposed to hurt. You learn that your needs come last. You learn that asking for more, asking for balance, asking to be seen makes you selfish, ungrateful, difficult. And that, my friends, is a lie we have been swallowing for far too long. A lie that has been dressed up as virtue and fed to us with a smile. LaShawn's mother was not weak. She was conditioned. Conditioned by a culture that told her a good woman sacrificed without question. Conditioned by a church that preached submission without accountability, that told her to honor and obey but never asked what she was receiving in return. Conditioned by a world that rewards women for being martyrs and punishes them for having standards, for having needs, for having voices. And the cost? It was not just her peace. It was not just her joy. It was the family's unity. It was LaShawn's sense of safety. It was the message sent to every child in that home that this is what love looks like. And it looks exhausting. It looks one sided. It looks like slow erasure. So let us talk about the three truths LaShawn wants every Black woman, every mother, every leader, every person in a relationship to carry forward from this conversation. First, unhealthy wife expectations distort family dynamic in ways that ripple through generations. When one person in a relationship is operating from a place of one sided submission, prioritizing their partner's comfort over their own humanity, the entire family feels it. Children watch, they internalize. They learn that love means losing yourself. They see their mother bending and breaking, and they either vow never to be like her or they repeat the pattern because it is all they know, because it is the only model they have ever seen. LaShawn saw their family torn apart by this imbalance, the resentment that simmered under the surface, the silence that filled the rooms, the unspoken rule that mom's needs did not matter as much as keeping the peace, as much as maintaining the illusion of harmony. That is not partnership. That is performance. And it leaves scars that last generations, scars that children carry into their own relationships, their own homes, their own lives. Second, childhood exposure shapes your relational blueprint in ways that are profound and lasting. LaShawn did not just witness their mother's misplaced devotion, they absorbed it into their bones, into their understanding of what relationships are supposed to look like. They learned what not to do, yes, but they also carried the weight of that dysfunction into their own life, into their own attempts at love and connection. That is the tricky part about breaking cycles. You can reject the behavior, you can see it clearly for what it is, but the emotional residue lingers. You find yourself overcompensating or shutting down or questioning whether you are asking for too much when you are really just asking to be seen, to be valued, to be met halfway. LaShawn's drive to redefine love on healthier terms did not come from a self help book or a motivational quote. It came from survival, from watching what happens when love becomes a one-way street and deciding with everything in them that they would never build a home on that foundation, that they would never accept that kind of imbalance as normal or inevitable. Third, breaking the cycle empowers the next generation in ways that are immeasurable and sacred. This is the part that makes me want to stand up and shout, that makes me want to grab every person listening by the shoulders and say, do you see what is possible here? LaShawn is not just healing for themselves, they are healing for every child who will grow up in a home where love is mutual, where boundaries are respected, where softness does not mean surrender. They are giving Black families the language and the tools to build relationships that uplift everyone, not just one person. They are saying out loud what so many of us were too afraid to whisper, what we were taught we had no right to say. You do not owe anyone your peace. You do not owe anyone your joy. You do not owe anyone a version of love that leaves you empty, depleted, unrecognizable to yourself. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, but my mama did the best she could, and you are right. She did. But doing your best does not mean the pattern was healthy. It does not mean we have to repeat it. It does not mean we cannot honor her and still choose differently. That is the work of the soft girl era. It is not about rejecting the women who came before us. It is not about dishonoring their sacrifices or dismissing their struggles. It is about refusing to carry the weight they were forced to carry. It is about saying, I see you, I love you, I honor you, and I am putting this burden down. I am choosing a different path. I am building a different kind of love. LaShawn's life is the living proof that you can grow up in dysfunction and still choose healing. You can witness brokenness and still build something whole. You can love your mother and still reject the script she was handed, the script that told her she had to disappear in order to be loved. That is not betrayal, that is evolution. That is the kind of love that does not just survive, it transforms, it heals, it creates a new legacy. So, what do we do with this? How do we take Lashawn's truth and turn it into action, into real change in our own lives? Here's the challenge, and I want you to take this seriously. I want you to audit your relationship expectations, sit down with a journal, a voice note, a conversation with yourself, and ask these questions. What patterns did I inherit? What wrong side expectations am I still carrying? Where am I performing devotion instead of experiencing partnership? Where am I giving more than I am receiving? And why do I believe that is what love requires? And then commit to one mutual action with your partner this week. Not something you do for them, not something they do for you, something you build together. A shared family vision board, a conversation about what partnership actually means to both of you, what it looks like in practice, not just in theory, a boundary you set together that protects your peace, your energy, your sense of self. This is not about perfection, it is about intention. It is about refusing to let the next generation inherit the same exhaustion, the same imbalance, the same one sided devotion. And if you are single, if you are healing, if you are in between chapters, if you are still figuring out what love is supposed to look like for you, this work is still for you. Because breaking the cycle starts with you. It starts with recognizing that you deserve a love that does not require you to disappear. It starts with believing that softness and strength can coexist, that you can be tender and still have boundaries, that you can be generous and still protect your peace. It starts with giving yourself permission to rest, to say no, to redefine what devotion looks like when it is rooted in self respect, in self love, in the understanding that you are worth more than what you can give. Because here's the truth Lashawn is living and breathing every single day. You're not required to repeat the story. You are not bound by the blueprint. You are allowed to love differently, to expect more, to demand reciprocity, to insist on balance. You are allowed to be soft without being small. You are allowed to honor your mother's sacrifices and still refuse to make the same ones. You are allowed to break the cycle, even if it makes people uncomfortable, especially if it makes people uncomfortable, especially if it challenges the way things have always been done, the way people have always expected you to show up. This is the soft girl era. This is the sacred pause. This is the moment where we stop grinding and start grounding, where we stop performing and start protecting, where we stop inheriting dysfunction and start building something new, something intentional, something that honors us as much as it honors the people we love. Lashawn Anyanwu is leading the way, and they are inviting us all to follow, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Not because we are angry, but because we are awake. Not because we are rejecting love, but because we are redefining it on terms that honor our humanity, our worth, our right to be whole. So here's what I am asking you to do: take LaShawn's story and let it sit with you. Let it challenge you. Let it crack open the parts of you that have been holding on to patterns that no longer serve you, patterns that were never yours to carry in the first place. And then do the work. Audit those expectations. Set that boundary. Have that conversation. Build that vision. Protect your peace like it is the most valuable thing you own, because it is. Fight for your softness like it is sacred, because it is. Refuse to accept one sided devotion as love, because it is not. We are not doing this alone. We are doing this together. We are doing this for the mothers who could not. We are doing this for the children who are watching. We are doing this for ourselves because we finally understand that we are worth the effort. We are worth the softness. We are worth the kind of love that does not leave us empty, that does not require us to erase ourselves, that does not mistake our sacrifice for our value. Now go, audit those expectations, break the cycle, Build stronger, build softer, build with intention. And remember, your soft girl era is not about being weak. It is about being wise enough to know that you deserve more and brave enough to claim it. Not tomorrow, not someday, today, right now. Starting with this breath, this decision, this refusal to carry what was never yours to hold. The cycle ends with you. Let it end with love.